Welcome back to the channel, a place where stories aren't just told, they are felt. If you believe that every soul carries a hidden story, every stranger holds a quiet battle, and every act of kindness can change a life forever, then you're exactly where you need to be. Take a deep breath, settle in, and let this story speak to your heart. The city never truly slept, but at midnight it pretended to rest. Streetlights hummed softly, traffic thinned into distant whispers, and buildings stood like tired giants holding secrets behind darkened windows. In one of those towering glass buildings, a woman named Evelyn Carter collapsed on the cold marble floor of her penthouse kitchen, her body hitting the ground with a dull, lonely sound that no one heard. Evelyn Carter was known to the world as a powerful CEO. Her name was printed in business magazines, spoken in boardrooms, and feared by competitors. She ran a multi-billion-dollar tech company, made decisions that affected thousands of employees, and carried herself with a confidence that seemed unbreakable. But power has a way of hiding pain, and success often silences suffering. As Evelyn lay unconscious, her phone buzzed on the counter. A message glowed on the screen, the last thing she had read before the room spun and her strength gave out. "Don't let them take my son." The message wasn't sent to anyone. It was typed into her notes app, a desperate reminder to herself. A thought that haunted her every night. Miles away, in the same building but far below the luxury floors, a man named Daniel Reyes pushed a janitor's cart down a quiet hallway. The wheels squeaked slightly as he moved, mop bucket sloshing with soapy water. Daniel worked the night shift because it paid a little extra, and extra mattered when you were raising a child alone. Daniel was a single father. His son, Leo, was 7 years old, curious, bright, and endlessly talkative. Leo believed his dad was the strongest man in the world, not because he lifted heavy things, but because he never missed a bedtime story, never forgot a promise, and always showed up, no matter how tired he was. Daniel cleaned offices that sparkled by day but felt empty by night. He wiped fingerprints off glass desks, emptied trash cans filled with discarded ideas, and polished floors that reflected ceiling lights like small artificial stars. He wasn't invisible to himself, but he knew he was invisible to most others. That night, as Daniel finished mopping near the executive elevators, he noticed something unusual. One of the private elevators, reserved only for top executives, was open. That almost never happened. A faint sound reached him. Not loud, not clear. Just a weak thud, followed by silence. Daniel hesitated. Rules were rules. Janitors weren't supposed to use executive elevators. But something in his chest tightened, the same instinct that made him run when Leo cried in the middle of the night. He pushed his cart aside and stepped into the elevator. His heart beat faster as the doors closed and the elevator rose smoothly upward, floor numbers climbing higher than he'd ever gone. When the doors opened, he was greeted by silence and luxury. Soft lighting, expensive art, air that smelled clean and cold. He followed the sound of his own footsteps until he saw her. Evelyn Carter lay on the floor. For a moment, Daniel froze. He recognized her immediately. Everyone did. The powerful CEO. The woman on magazine covers. The kind of person who never noticed someone like him. But on the floor, she wasn't powerful. She was human. Daniel rushed to her side. He checked her breathing, his hands shaking as he remembered the first aid training he barely passed years ago. She was alive, but barely conscious. He called emergency services, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his bones. As he waited, he gently turned her onto her side, talking to her softly, not knowing if she could hear him. "You're going to be okay," he said, more to himself than to her. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second. Her lips moved. "Don't let them take my son." Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't understand, but the pain in her voice was unmistakable. The ambulance arrived, lights flashing against the glass walls. Paramedics rushed in, taking over. As they lifted Evelyn onto a stretcher, her hand suddenly gripped Daniel's sleeve. "Please," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I won't," he said, though he didn't know what he was promising. At the hospital, Daniel stayed longer than he planned. He should have gone home, but something kept him there. Maybe it was the memory of her words. Maybe it was the familiar fear of losing a child. Hours later, a doctor approached him. "You saved her life," the doctor said. "If you hadn't found her when you did." Daniel nodded, uncomfortable with praise. He asked one question. "She mentioned a son. Is he okay?" The doctor hesitated. "That's complicated." Evelyn woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and a wave of dread. Memories flooded back. The collapse. The fear. The message. Her son, Noah, was 10 years old. Brilliant, sensitive, and the center of her world. What the world didn't know was that Noah's father had died years ago, and since then, Evelyn had been fighting a quiet legal war with her late husband's wealthy family. They wanted Noah. They claimed Evelyn was unfit. Too busy. Too ambitious. Too cold. They had money, influence, and a team of lawyers who smiled while sharpening knives. When Evelyn learned that Daniel had stayed at the hospital, she asked to see him. He entered the room nervously, still in his janitor uniform, feeling wildly out of place. "You saved me," she said softly. Daniel shrugged. "Anyone would have." "No," she replied. "They wouldn't." She told him everything. About Noah. About the custody battle. About the fear that kept her awake at night. She didn't know why she trusted him. Maybe because he had nothing to gain. Maybe because he had listened. Daniel listened quietly. When she finished, he said, "I'm a single dad." Her eyes met his. "I know what it's like," he continued. "To be scared every day that something could take your child away." The court hearing came faster than expected. Evelyn's lawyers were confident, but confidence didn't ease fear. On the day of the hearing, something unexpected happened. Daniel showed up. He had been subpoenaed as a witness. The opposing lawyers didn't know his story, didn't know the weight his words carried. Daniel told the court exactly what he saw. A woman who worked herself to exhaustion not out of greed, but fear. A mother who carried love like a burden and a shield. "I've cleaned her offices," Daniel said. "There are drawings on the fridge. School schedules on the wall. She's not absent. She's fighting." The room was silent. The judge listened. Weeks later, the ruling came. Evelyn retained full custody. She cried when she heard the decision, holding Noah so tightly he laughed and complained he couldn't breathe. Evelyn never forgot Daniel. She offered him a new job. A better one. Benefits. Day shifts. Daniel accepted, not because of the money, but because it meant being home for dinner. Two families, once strangers, became something more. Not perfect, not simple, but real. And every night, when Daniel tucked Leo into bed, and Evelyn kissed Noah goodnight, the same truth echoed quietly in their hearts. Sometimes, the soul recognizes another soul before the world ever does. If this story touched you, let it remind you that kindness has no job title, no salary, and no limits. Thank you for being here, and until the next story, take care of your soul.